Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. I understand I'm the last speaker of the day, so I'm going to talk very slowly for the next 2 hours. My name is Gicinto. I arrived at about 5 a.m. this morning on the train. I am based in the United States from Kansas City, Missouri. How many have been? Shocking. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I wear a number of hats, as I'm sure many of you all do as well. I am a husband and a father. I have a couple of boys. They're 11 and 13 years old. It is the greatest job in the world, better than any of these things here on the left. I am a brother, a son, and recently became a chief information security officer. That may be the toughest job in the world these days. For fun, I get to be a professor. I am a professor of practice in cybersecurity at Jewell College, which is in a corner of Kansas City, Missouri, in a town called Liberty. And it's also my alma mater. So it's quite an honor for me to be able to go back to the place that was instrumental in giving me my education and the start in my career, and to be able to teach and contribute to the students who are there now. I'm also a professor, an adjunct professor at CET University here in Ukraine, teaching insider threat at the Masters in Cyber Defense program. And that is a lot of fun. I am very excited because I get to teach in person on Monday, as opposed to having to teach remotely. But normally we do that remotely. Some people think I'm a friend, which is great. I have a few of those, and I do coach. I coach youth sports. I've coached baseball, basketball, American football, not regular football. Sorry. I think this may be a little bit of a typo here, but I've also found myself in a number of leadership roles. Not a leader X. I don't know what a leader X is. I've just been a regular leader. So those are a number of the roles that I have in my life. These are a number of the places that I've worked before. Not in any order necessarily, but when I was in college at Jewell, I was deeply influenced by the events of September 11th, 2001, and the attack in the United States on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. And that prompted me to go into government service. I didn't expect to end up where I did. I expected to go a different direction, to go into the military. But I had an accident playing sports. I broke my arm. And the military told me I needed to wait a little bit longer before it would consider me. So I thought, everybody needs a backup plan, right? Mine will be the CIA. So I was recruited into the CIA out of my master's degree program. I have a master's in defense and strategic studies from Missouri State University. I joined the agency in 2006. I served for 10 years in the Directorate of Operations. It was my job to collect foreign intelligence. I worked in a number of different issues, counterterrorism being a prominent one for most of my career. And then I found myself making a transfer into the private sector, where I went to Uber, built an intelligence and insider threat program there for 2 years, and then I went to Tesla. Anybody heard of Tesla? Okay. A couple of people have heard of Tesla. Good. Okay. They make vehicles, and I was there for a year also building a program in insider threat investigations and intelligence. I worked at a company called Risk IQ. That's a data company. They were acquired by Microsoft. I'm sure no one's heard of them. But that was in a different kind of role. That time, I was actually a cybersecurity vendor helping clients and companies with cybersecurity tools, services, and learning to use data. So not working the in-house, but supporting companies. And then I thought, well, you know what? You haven't tried blockchain yet, so let's go to Chainlink Labs and try blockchain. So Chainlink is a Web3 company that's in smart contract technology. And I built a security intelligence program there before coming back full circle to college again, where I get to wear my professor tweed jacket every day and drink cappuccinos and walk around in my Air Jordans on campus, being very comfortable. It's very nice. I like it. Thank you. Thank you. One person has heard of Air Jordans. Great. So I want to tell you a little bit about what I was taught to be. Taught to be growing up, and certainly trained to be when I found myself in government service, particularly in an intelligence organization. These are the adjectives that generally described what I was expected to be, and what I think many of you can probably relate to in terms of who you're expected to be, or what you're expected to demonstrate. Or certainly as a leader, we're expected to demonstrate strength, and we're expected to be decisive, to be able to make decisions, show courage, be the one with the great ideas, innovate, have all the answers, no fear. Fear is not allowed. To be calm and steady, and ultimately to be a winner. I am very competitive. I did play sports growing up, so that was not new to me. I'm still very competitive. Anybody know kind of what this picture is? A Viking. Yeah. Yeah. I was taught and expected to have a Viking mindset. And this is a thing. The Viking mindset embodies qualities of resilience, strategic thinking, big picture thinking, and efficiency. And that sounds great. Those are all wonderful things. And Irwin here says that when we adopt this mindset, we can transform our approach to prioritization and achieve remarkable success. And then Brené Brown says when you're a Viking, or you have a Viking mindset, you see things as either you're a victim in life, which is a sucker and a loser, the people who aren't Vikings. And those folks are always being taken advantage of, right? That's what the victim is. And when you're a Viking, you kind of see others as a threat, or just the threat of being victimized yourself by others. And so, as Vikings, we have to stay in control. We have to dominate, right? Exert power over things, she says, and then you never show vulnerability. Ultimately, she also says, you see everyone as either a winner or a loser. And that's what I was taught. That's the type of leadership that I was taught, was the Viking mentality of leadership. And when she talks about this, she says that the Viking or victim worldview divides the world into winners and losers, and it has very little room for vulnerability. But it's useful in life-threatening or traumatic situations, right? If it's an emergency, we need to be decisive. We need to have courage and be brave and act quickly. We need to be able to put the fear aside and perform and execute. But the reality is, not every situation we find ourselves in is an emergency. Most of the time, real life, the workplace, or relationships, family, it's not an emergency. Unless it's your in-laws, and then everything's an emergency, it seems like, whenever they call. But that's just me, perhaps. What Brené Brown says is that when the emergency is over, that victim Viking mentality prevents connection. So to get into that, I want to tell you a little bit of a story. Now, one person here has heard of Air Jordan's The Shoe. Who's heard of Michael Jordan? Okay, great. I was really nervous. If you hadn't, this was going to be a really awkward next 20 minutes. So, great, that's good. Okay, so this is Michael Jordan, arguably the greatest basketball player that's ever lived. Some may feel differently. That's okay. This is my talk. So, he's the greatest that ever lived. Michael Jordan was known for being ruthless. He was the ultimate competitor, the ultimate winner, never a loser, worked harder than everybody else, practiced harder than everybody else, tolerated nothing less than perfection from everybody else, and was no stranger to criticizing anybody else if they did not meet his expectations. Has anyone ever had a boss like that? If your boss is in the room, I understand why you don't want to raise your hand. So we're going to say, no, of course not. No one's ever had a boss like that. So I'm going to tell you a story about Michael Jordan being a Viking. This is Steve Kerr. Steve Kerr was a teammate of Michael Jordan's in the second stint of when the Chicago Bulls won back-to-back-to-back NBA championships, National Basketball Association championships. Michael Jordan, I did not convert this into metric. Okay, 6'6". How, What? How many? Okay, almost 2 meters. Almost 2 meters, or about 2 meters. Okay, 6'6", about 2 meters. Steve Kerr, 6'3", less than that in meters. Okay, oh boy, 220 pounds. Less pounds. Okay. So, one day in practice, and I'm not talking about a game, I'm talking about practice, these two kind of got into it with each other. This was in 1996, right before, and some of you were like, I wasn't even alive, dude. Okay, just bear with me, this is still relevant, even though it seems historical now. But right before what would have been their second NBA championship that they won. So during practice, Michael was getting into Steve's head a little bit. He was pushing him around, getting onto him. And Steve, who was a new guy on the team, said, you know what, I'm not going to take this. And he stood up to him. So what did Michael do? Punched him in the face. And that's Steve's quote on that. He said, I agreed with him one time, and he punched me in the face. Knocked him down. The coach of the Bulls, Phil Jackson, kicked Michael out of practice. Said, get out of here. Go home, take a shower, cool off. And it was, as I mentioned, during a scrimmage or a practice. And it was really just because Kerr disagreed and decided to stand up to him. And nobody did that, by the way. Even players, other players that were more meters than Michael Jordan didn't stand up to Michael Jordan because he was the greatest in the world. And they thought, wow, because of his position and power, if he's saying it, must be right, or I must be wrong. And so he got used to treating people that way. So I'm going to move into what happened later. This is the 1997 finals for the NBA championship. And when you play finals in the NBA, you play 7 games if you need to go that far. But it's whatever team wins 4, the best 4 out of 7 wins, okay? So it's the Chicago Bulls playing the Utah Jazz in the 1997 NBA finals. And we get to game 4, and the Bulls are up 2-1. But it comes right down to the end of that game, and we're in Utah. So it's a hostile crowd. Some people said this was the loudest crowd in NBA history. The coaches had to wear earplugs. It was so loud. They couldn't hear themselves talk. The announcers couldn't even hear themselves, nor could anyone on television hear the announcers speak. It was so loud in this building. And it came down to the very end of the game. Who's getting the ball? The Bulls are down. They have the greatest player in the world. He gets the ball. And he missed the shot. And the Bulls lost. So now we're tied 2-2. Game 5. Once again, we're in Utah. And this time, Michael Jordan is sick. They call it the flu game because he played with the flu. We found out later he actually had food poisoning. Anybody had food poisoning? Man, that's the worst. How many have played an NBA Finals basketball game when you had food poisoning? Just me. Okay, all right. Well, he did. And despite having food poisoning, he scored 36 points in that game. Many people consider it to be the greatest performance of his career. and they won. Because he's the greatest player in the world. Nobody else could have done that, right? But him. Then we get to game 6. Yep, I didn't really think about the tongue. Like, but that was kind of his signature move there. He just let that thing hang out everywhere. So it's game 6, and it gets down to the end, and once again, Chicago is down. They are down by 2 points in this game with 10 seconds left. Chicago calls timeout. Everybody comes to the bench. They're going to discuss what their strategy is, what play they're going to call, how are we going to score at least 2 points to tie it, maybe send it into overtime. Maybe we'll turn off the screen. Or maybe we'll try to shoot a 3-pointer, maybe win the game. I don't know. But the coach drew up a play. And who do you think is going to take the last shot here when you have the best player in the world who just came off of a career game when he had food poisoning? Who's going to take the last shot? Is it this guy who scored a career 5,437 points and never went to an all-star game? Probably not when you have Michael Jordan on your team. Except he was. Do you know who passed him the ball? Michael Jordan. Same guy that punched him in the face earlier that year. So, why? Why would he do that? Michael Jordan had the most buzzer beaters in NBA history. 9 times the clock was expiring to 0. He took the shot, it went in, and the Bulls won. 9 times. 24 times, he hit the shot that won the game. Remember Steve Kerr, 5,700 points? Michael Jordan had 32,000 career points. Steve Kerr, 0 All-Star games in his career. Michael Jordan, 14 All-Star games. Why did this guy not take the shot? Why did Jordan pass the ball? I'm going to tell you why in a couple minutes. So first, let's talk about Brené Brown a little bit. I quoted her earlier. This is who she is. She's a researcher at the University of Houston. She's written 6 New York Times bestsellers. She is one of the best researchers, scholars, speakers, thinkers when it comes to talking about leadership, and in particularly trust and vulnerability. So what does she say? She says that we have to have the courage to be vulnerable when we're leaders and when we're colleagues. She does not subscribe to the Viking mentality. She says that vulnerability is not winning or losing, that it's having the courage to show up and to be seen when we have no control over the outcome. It's putting yourself out there. Vulnerability is not, just to be clear so that we understand, it is not weakness. It's not being soft or naive. It's not meekness, and it's certainly not being judgmental. Calling vulnerability all those things is a lie. That's why I wore this shirt. Why else can you wear a shirt that says lie on it? Maybe because you worked at the CIA, but that's okay. That's another story, and not why I wore the shirt. But what it is courage. It is courageous to be vulnerable, to put yourself out there, to share your feelings or your experiences. It is brave and it's empathetic. Telling someone else that you understand how they feel, that you listen, that you put yourself in their shoes, that's also showing strength to have that ability to share that without fear. And it's also curiousness. It's asking questions. It's the opposite of being judgmental. I'm going to give you an example of what I mean. And this is the TV stand example. I have a colleague who I believe, since this is going to be shown online, I will not use his real name, but I'm going to call him John. Call him John. His real name is not John, by the way. John came from a family of builders, carpenters, construction workers, very gifted and skilled with their hands. And that's definitely not John. John did not have that gift. But when it came time for his father to build his new home, in which John's brother helped because he has that gift and their grandfather had that gift, John felt like he was a little bit on an island. He felt sort of that he wasn't included, and he wanted to help. He wanted to contribute. He wanted to do something to contribute to the building of this house, but that's just not his gift. And nobody really wanted him to screw anything up on their house, so he wasn't really given the opportunity. But his father said, you know what? You can put my new TV stand together for me. That would be nice and helpful. And so John said, yes, sir, I can do that. I can build a TV stand, no problem. So John set to work one day in the living room, got everything out of the box, had the instructions, went to work. And the instructions called for you building this TV stand upside down. You want the top of it on the ground, and then you build everything up from there. So that's what John did all day. He had the tools, he had everything. He did not need any help, nor did he ask for any help. And let me tell you what, he nailed it. He literally nailed it. He built that thing exactly as it was designed to be built. Now, he builds it, it's still upside down. So you have to turn it over in order to get it right side up, and then it goes in its place. So he tried to lift it, and he couldn't, because it's a giant TV stand, and he needed some help. So he asked for help because he realized there was no possible way he could do that on his own. And his father said, okay, sure, I'll help you. And the two of them got together, they got down to lift it up, and they couldn't lift it up. Now, this was strange. It was strange because when they carried the box in with the TV stand parts, two people carried it just fine. So it somehow got heavier when it was being put together. And John was really unsure about this because he didn't use extra parts. He didn't bring anything else in. He didn't fill it up with books and then try to turn it upside down. So how did this thing get heavier in the process of building it? Well, I'm going to tell you how. But first, they had to deconstruct it. They had to start taking it apart to figure out what was accounting for this additional weight inside this TV stand. And they kept taking pieces off and taking pieces off and still trying to lift, and they still couldn't lift it. They had to get it all the way back to the very first step. To realize that when I say John nailed it, he literally nailed it to the floor and didn't realize it. So they had to pull the nails out to disconnect it from the floor to be able to build it again. John said, I don't need any help. I don't need help to build this. I can do this. His father had offered, but John said, no, I got this. I got the tools I need. I got the instructions. I got the perseverance and the strength. And he did. But he didn't have everything it took, which was paying attention to some details. If his father had built that thing with him, do you think his father would have nailed it to the floor? Probably not. So his attempt to project strength and his attempt to project knowledge and expertise and confidence, instead of saying, hey, you know what? I've never actually built a TV stand before. Maybe I could use a little help. That led to an outcome that was thoroughly much more embarrassing for him than it would have been for him just to say, hey, Dad, do you mind giving me a hand with this? So Brené Brown defines vulnerability as uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. And that really causes her to think about what it means to love, what it means to love someone else. When you take the risk of loving someone else who may not love you back, whose safety we can't ensure, and who may stay in our lives or may leave without a moment's notice, who may be loyal to the day they die or betray us tomorrow, that's vulnerability. So now that we understand that context and how Brené Brown looks at it, how John wishes he would have looked at it, why did Jordan pass the ball? When he got kicked out of practice by his coach, he went home and he did a little bit of reflection. He thought about it. He looked inward at himself, and he said, you know what? man, you're being an idiot about this whole process. And he knew then that he had to be more respectful to his teammates. He changed his behavior. Steve Kerr said that they talked it out. He said it was probably, in a weird way, the best thing that I ever did, standing up to him, getting punched in the face. He said he tested everybody he played with, and I stood up to him. And he said from that point on, our relationship was dramatically improved, and our trust in each other was everything. He said it was like, all right, we got that out of the way, now let's go to war together. So when Phil Jackson drew up the play, Phil Jackson's the coach, everybody in the gym, says Michael Jordan, everybody on TV knew that the ball was coming to me. And he said, I looked at Steve and said, this is your chance. Because he knew that John Stockton, one of the Utah Jazz players, was going to come over and double team him. And he said, Steve, I'm coming to you. And he did. And this is the final shot that won the 1997 NBA championships. So, as you think about leadership, as you think about Vikings or victims, I would urge you to think about being vulnerable. The lie in leadership is that you have to be this. The lie that Viking mentality people tell themselves is that everybody else is this. But when you show that vulnerability, that's how you move past that lie and turn that opportunity into an opportunity to believe. Thank you. I believe, see what I did there? If you'd like more information on the Masters of Cyber Defense program at SET, you want to take a look at this one. And then there's an open house this week where I'm going to be speaking a little bit more. No, there's not. No, I'm being told, hey, there's another open house event that you're more than welcome to check out related to SET. And I certainly encourage you to do so. I also welcome you to find me on LinkedIn, connect with me. I would love to hear from you. I would love to chat if you'd like, answer any questions, and tell me if we have any more time. And I'm happy to stand and ask, or I'll stick around afterwards and answer any questions.
Yeah, we have a few minutes for questions. Any questions?
Thank you very much. And your print very connected to our activity, because in our company, in DataArt, we design a special training based on the first season of Ted Lasso. This training is named the Ted Lasso Leadership School. It takes maybe 2 months with weekly training, and we every time have the full group. Thank you very much for your belief.
Thank you.